Hey, Real Talk is here. A global epidemic has turned humanity into bloodthirsty mutants. Robert Neville is the only one who managed to survive the outbreak of a dangerous virus. At least, that's what he thinks.
Everybody's dead. Everybody is dead.
The film begins with a story told by a doctor who claims that scientists have found the perfect cure for cancer. But, as usually happens, something went wrong and the cure turned out to be not a cure at all but a dangerous virus. The virus got out of control and years later, New York is completely empty. The streets are littered with abandoned cars. Underground tunnels are flooded and fresh grass is breaking through the asphalt. A bright red Mustang rushes through the silent city. The main character, Robert, is behind the wheel. In the passenger seat sits his partner Agent K. Oh, that's another movie. In the passenger seat sits his faithful friend, a German shepherd named Sam. A man scares off a flock of crows, unaccustomed to human audacity. Suddenly, deers run out onto the road, nestling among the skyscrapers. Robert, narrowly avoiding an accident, follows them. He is hunting. However, taking accurate aim at a moving target on the move is no easy task. The herd of ungulates runs away. Robert continues on foot. Times Square is almost waist-deep in grass, with no tourists, locals, or endless traffic. The man tracks down a deer but does not have time to shoot. A lioness appears, followed by a lion with cubs. Having decided that it is not worth messing with an entire pride, Robert wisely retreats, especially since the timer goes off, reminding him that the sun will soon set. Having changed cars, he returns home, where he cooks dinner. On the refrigerator, you can see the cover of Time magazine with his photo and the caption, Savior. After dinner, he bathes the dog, constantly talking to it. There are no other interlocutors in all of New York. Casting a sad glance at the setting sun, Robert closes all the windows with metal shutters and bolts the doors. At night, he sleeps in the bathroom, with a rifle and a dog. And strange sounds are heard outside, reminiscent of a mixture of animal roars and howls. In a dream, Robert sees the past. He takes his wife, daughter, and dog from home. They are excited, and the military calls him General Kenobi. And the military calls him Colonel. An urgent evacuation of the population is taking place. In half an hour, Manhattan will be completely closed. The escorts take them to the evacuation point. From the conversation, it becomes clear that there is some kind of virus in the air. The presidential address is broadcast on the radio. The head of state has signed a decree introducing a military quarantine in New York. Robert notes that creating a vaccine within a week or two will help prevent a pandemic, and he will do this while remaining in the city. A pale man crashes into the car while driving. The dream ends. Robert wakes up in bed, despite having fallen asleep in the bathtub, and starts exercising. After that, he goes down to the basement, where the dog is not allowed. There is a working laboratory there, where cleanliness is maintained. Here he is developing a vaccine against the disease, but all the surviving laboratory rats are aggressive. However, one of the samples suppressed the symptoms. Robert writes in his journal that it is necessary to conduct tests on a person. Taking a rifle, he goes outside, first to a video rental store, where mannequins are placed. Robert talks to them as if they were old acquaintances. This is how he maintains his mental state, imitating normal communication. The next stop is a cornfield. Here the man collects fresh cobs. Then he has a monotonous job, searching for residential buildings on a map. In the conditions of the apocalypse, he does not rob, but collects supplies for the only survivor. For himself, he stumbles upon a furnished nursery. Apparently, the couple who once lived here were preparing for the birth of a child. It reminds Robert of his own family. After filling up with gas using a hand pump, he goes on the air. His message makes it clear that he is the only survivor in the city. Every afternoon, he visits the pier at the southern seaport. If anyone else has survived and hears him, he makes an appointment there, playing golf on the wing of an airplane on the deck of an aircraft carrier while waiting. The dog smells a deer nearby. Robert begins to track it down. Sam runs after the animal through the doorway, despite his owner's shouts. The man follows, turning on the flashlight on his rifle and in full combat readiness. He mumbles under his breath that he needs to leave and, just in case, covers the turned-on flashlight with his palm so as not to attract attention prematurely. On the floor and steps, there are traces of red liquid. A crimson trail leads upstairs. Robert finds the unalive deer, but there is no dog anywhere. Trembling with fear, the man goes on. Suddenly, a beam of light falls on a crowd of strange-looking people, but they ignore Robert. He quickly covers the flashlight with his hand and leaves. The dog cowered under the table in fear. It was frightened by one of the locals, who jumps on Robert and gets a bullet. The man runs out of the building, and the local inhabitants follow him on his heels. Jumping out of the window into the open sky along with his pursuers, Robert escapes. Those infected with the virus lead a nocturnal lifestyle due to their painful sensitivity to sunlight. They are leaving this world when exposed to ultraviolet radiation. Leaving Sam in the car, the scientist makes a trap. He collects his blood for bait. Then he returns to the house, pours blood into the center of the noose and waits. Soon the trap works and pulls one of the infected into the shadow under the bridge. Robert knocks out the captive with the butt of his rifle, but then another one appears from the opening. He roars angrily at the hunter, suffering burns from the sunlight. This surprises the scientist. Such strange behavior is not typical for the sick ones. The captured infected turns out to be a woman. Robert records the beginning of the experiment on camera and injects her with the vaccine that made the test rat less aggressive. The first reaction to the drug is expressed in a decrease in temperature and a decrease of the heart rate, but literally a couple of minutes later, the subject has a fit of rage, after which she immediately falls asleep. This is very upsetting to Neville. Having finished the experiments, the man goes up to the second floor to record a video diary. It becomes clear that he is immune to the virus, which is transmitted both through the air and through direct contact with the infected. But dogs are only susceptible to the airborne strain. Another flashback transports us back to the night of the evacuation. Streets were blocked off. Robert and his family walked through crowds of panicked people. As they boarded the ferry, people in respirators were checked for clear eyes with a special device. Robert's wife was found to be infected and was not allowed to board with her daughter and husband. A scandal erupted, but thanks to the scientist's high position, the woman was scanned again, and the result was clean. She was allowed to continue. Robert escorted his family to the helicopter, where one of the soldiers promised to look after them. He said goodbye to his loved ones. His daughter gave Sam, the puppy, to protect her dad. The helicopter began to take off, and the hero woke up again. During his daily rounds of the city, Robert noticed that one mannequin from the video rental store was standing on the street, but there were no other sane survivors left in New York. Immediately, he had a fit of paranoia. Suddenly, ill-wishers were watching him right now from the windows. The men nervously fired in all directions. When he ran out of ammo, he approached the mannequin, but stepped into a trap, exactly the same one he had made for the infected test subject the day before. Robert hit his head and lost consciousness. He came to, hearing the barking of his faithful Sam. All this time, she had been running below, although it was already getting dark. Using a knife, he managed to free himself, but a metal spike pierced his leg during the fall. He had to crawl to the car in the last rays of the setting sun. At dusk, mutated hounds went hunting. Robert first heard them, and then saw them in the broken windows of the building. Only one strip of light separated him from death. He almost managed to reach the car when the sun set, and the infected dogs attacked him. Robert managed to shoot one. Sam grabbed the second, and the third almost mauled the men. Only the help of the faithful shepherd dog allowed him to avoid death. But Sam was injured. The scientist took the injured dog home, hoping for a miracle. He injected her with the vaccine that had helped the rat. Then he hugged the shepherd, sitting on the floor and waiting for the result. But Sam's fur began to fall out, her eyes turned red, and a characteristic blackening appeared on her gums. After a couple of moments, she attacked her owner. Robert had to strangle his only remaining friend. In the morning, he buried the dog, unable to believe that she was no longer there. Then he planned revenge on the infected. At dusk, he drove around the city to lure them to the pier, where he crushed them with a car equipped with ultraviolet lamps. The numerical superiority nullified all of Robert's tactics. The infected overturned the car, after which their leader approached the locked-up scientist. He almost killed Neville, but he was scared away by a powerful ultraviolet lamp, lit by someone unknown from the outside. The stunned scientist was dragged into the car by others, survivors. The woman at the wheel tried to find out where he lived. Losing consciousness, Robert gave the address, but asked not to come there until dawn so that the infected would not track him down. We see the last memory of the past. Another helicopter, having lost control due to an attack by monsters, crashed into the helicopter, taking off with his family. Robert woke up to the sound of Shrek playing on the TV. His leg had been neatly stitched up, and he was lying on the couch in his apartment. From the kitchen came the clattering of dishes. Someone was there. Robert pulled a pistol from the cabinet and went to confront the uninvited guests. It turned out to be a woman named Anna and her son, Ethan. Robert set the gun aside and joined them for breakfast, which Anna had prepared from his supplies. He was still in a daze, struggling to process the loss of his dog and the fact that he had finally encountered other people. Anna explained that she had picked up his radio broadcast and had waited all day at the dock, but Robert hadn't shown up because he had been burying his friend. She mentioned they were heading to a survivors' colony, but Robert insisted there was no safe zone. Anna argued that in the colder climate of the mountains, the virus couldn't survive and that there were other people. Robert snapped, smashing a plate and yelling that there were no other survivors, scaring Anna. To defuse the situation, he went upstairs to be alone. Calming down, Neville came back to the living room where Ethan was watching Shrek. Robert began reciting lines from memory, quoting the dialogue between Shrek and Donkey, possibly because he felt like a bit of a creature himself. This act built trust with his guests. Anna then told him how she and Ethan had survived. They both had immunity. She suggested Robert come with them to the camp, but he refused. confused. His mission was to find a cure here. He believed that lowering the body's temperature might help the serum work better. Later, Anna tried again to convince him to go with them, but Robert repeated that the colony didn't exist, the evacuation had gone wrong, and the military had no real plan. Anna, however, clung to her belief in the safe zone. Their argument was cut short by a noise outside. The infected had tracked Anna's car the previous night and were now attacking Robert's fortress. The first wave of infected was repelled by a preset explosion, but the battle had only just begun. The night was dark and full of terrors. Stunned by the blast, Robert made his way upstairs. Anna and Ethan weren't there, and the window was shattered. He was attacked by the infected. In the ensuing fight, he was forced to blow up some of his own supplies, but this only delayed the creatures temporarily. Robert found Anna and Ethan hiding under a cabinet and managed to shoot one of the infected that had come for them. Meanwhile, outside, a second wave of attackers was gathering. The group retreated to the basement lab. The monsters climbed onto the roof and broke through, flooding the house. In the lab, Robert noticed that the serum had worked on a cool-down body. The infected woman had returned to her human form, but the other infected were already breaking into the lab. Only a thick glass door stood between them and the group. It was just a matter of time before the door would give way. Robert took the blood of the cured woman, handing it to Anna, and hid her and Ethan in a safe nook to wait until sunrise. He stayed outside, looking at a photo of his family. Then he pulled out a hidden grenade and removed the pin. As the leader of the infected shattered the glass, Robert charged at him, releasing the safety pin. In the final scene, Anna and Ethan walk along a highway through an autumn forest. They step out of the car, and approach large metal gates. Beyond them is a camp of survivors. Robert had been wrong after all. This movie isn't just an intense post-apocalyptic thriller, but also a deep reflection on human nature, loneliness, and survival. It raises many important questions, encouraging the audience to reflect on the value of life, the importance of human connection, and what truly matters in this world. It's a story that shows even in the darkest of worlds, there is still room for light and hope. It teaches us to cherish life, find meaning in existence, and never give up, no matter the challenges we face. Share your thoughts in the comments, and a huge thanks to everyone who subscribes and put thumbs up. See you in the next one.